Mick McQuaid here. I'd like to review UX design guidelines provided by two industry leaders, Apple and Google. I'm going to quote them, so listen carefully to the choice of words, because I'm sure they spend many hours searching for the right words to describe their design viewpoints. Now, I'm only going to be sharing their words here, so you should then view their online demos, and I'll provide a link at the end where I'd like you to continue your exploration. First are the macOS human interface guidelines, which include the following principles. Now, I've abbreviated the descriptions here. You should familiarize yourself with the full descriptions at Apple's site. A mental model is the concept of an object or experience that people carry in their heads. As people learn and experience, they refine their mental models and build new ones. They bring mental models to an app, and they refine those mental models during usage. Metaphors are building blocks in the user's mental model of a task or experience. Nearly every user operation involves the manipulation of an object using an action. A user must identify an object on the display, select it, and perform an action, either manipulating the object or invoking a command. The question is whether the action is explicit, such as provided by a menu, or implicit, such as provided by ambiguous visual cues like drag and drop. Direct manipulation is an example of an implied action that helps users feel that they are controlling the objects represented on screen. Dragging and dropping, like pinching and spreading, exemplify direct manipulation. The user, not the computer, should initiate and control actions. On the other hand, users expect the computer to do things for them, to understand what they want done. The user wants to feel in control, but not be required to micromanage. Maintain a continuous conversation with users that keeps them informed about what's happening and gives them a sense of control. Use animation and discoverability to improve communication. Consistency across apps allows users to transfer their knowledge and skills from one app to another. Bear in mind consistency with macOS standards throughout the app, with earlier versions of the app, and expectations from mental models. Encourage people to explore without fear by making most actions easily reversible. Forgiveness imparts an impression of reliability. Give users the opportunity to cancel potentially dangerous actions. Aesthetic integrity means that the visual and behavioral design of an app is consistent with the content and tasks it presents. An app is true to its usage. Bear in mind that the foregoing represents a small fraction of the macOS Human Interface Guidelines site. You should read it all, skimming the parts that are not relevant to you. Now I'd like to go on to the iOS Human Interface Guidelines. Now Apple, I should mention, also publishes watchOS guidelines and tvOS guidelines. And I'm just going over the macOS and iOS guidelines, but the entire set are extremely interesting and useful to you. This platform tries to distinguish itself by emphasizing three themes. So here are some quotes from the mid-2016 version of the site. It may have been updated since then. Well, it probably has been updated since then. First of all, clarity. So throughout the system, text is legible at every size, icons are present and lucid, adornments are subtle and appropriate, and a sharpened focus on functionality motivates the design. Negative space, color, fonts, graphics, and interface elements subtly highlight important content and convey interactivity. Deference. Fluid motion and a crisp, beautiful interface help people understand and interact with content while never competing with it. Content typically fills the entire screen, while translucency and blurring often hint at more. Minimal use of bezels, gradients, and drop shadows keep the interface light and airy, while ensuring that content is paramount. Depth. Distinct visual layers and realistic motion convey hierarchy, impart vitality, and facilitate understanding. Touch and discoverability heighten delight and enable access to functionality and additional content without losing context. Transitions provide a sense of depth as you navigate through content. Now, the iOS Human Interface Guidelines include an abbreviated version of the aesthetic integrity definition in the macOS Human Interface Guidelines, and it may prove worthwhile to compare them to see if they impart a different understanding of the same idea. Another thing I'd like to mention is the problem of dilution by qualifier. Notice that the word deference, the theme for deference, uses the word while in 3 different places. This is a qualifier. The word while is a qualifier that may dilute the meaning of the theme, as when someone says, it should be fast enough while being slow enough. Is it possible that guidelines with a lot of qualifiers may be all things to all people, or nothing to no one? That's a question I'd like you to ponder, not only about these guidelines, but about the other guidelines we'll look at. And let's move on now to Google's guidelines. So Google publishes design guidelines under the name Material Design. And additional related Google projects include Material Design Lite, which is a project for quick and dirty material design, and Polymer, which is a project to bring material design to websites. There are 3 principles, and following are the descriptions of the 3 principles of material design as they were promulgated in mid-2016. These are brief, abstract descriptions. You should read the entire material design site at least, and potentially view some material design videos on YouTube, especially those videos put together by the material design team. I also like the material design video that's put out by XDA developers. That's just the initials XDA, popular Android site, popular Android set of forums. And the video put together by XDA developers uses quite a bit of the material design website to illustrate its points. So check all that stuff out, but here let me just mention these 3 principles. Material is the metaphor. A material metaphor is the unifying theory of a rationalized space and a system of motion. The material is grounded in tactile reality, inspired by the study of paper and ink, yet technologically advanced and open to imagination and magic. Surfaces and edges of the material provide visual cues that are grounded in reality. The use of familiar tactile attributes helps users quickly understand affordances. Yet the flexibility of the material creates new affordances that supersede those in the physical world without breaking the rules of physics. The fundamentals of light, surface, and movement are key to conveying how objects move, interact, and exist in space and in relation to each other. Realistic lighting shows seams, divides space, and indicates moving parts. Bold, graphic, intentional. The foundational elements of print-based design, typography, grids, space, scale, color, and use of imagery guide visual treatments. These elements do far more than please the eye. They create hierarchy, meaning, and focus. Deliberate color choices, edge-to-edge imagery, large-scale typography, and intentional white space all create a bold and graphic interface that immerse the user in the experience. An emphasis on user actions makes core functionality immediately apparent and provides waypoints for the user. Motion provides meaning. Motion respects and reinforces the user as the prime mover. Primary user actions are inflection points that initiate motion, transforming the whole design. All action takes place in a single environment. Objects are presented to the user without breaking the continuity of experience, even as they are transformed and reorganized. Motion is meaningful and appropriate, serving to focus attention and maintain continuity. Feedback is subtle yet clear. Transitions are efficient yet coherent. Okay, so those are the three principles of material design. Let me point to an interesting website called principles.design. This site provides a normative look, that is a prescriptive look, at design principles, sharing 125 examples of design principles, including the three that I just showed you, the macOS design guidelines, the iOS design guidelines, and the material design guidelines. And critiques of some of these are on the principles.design site. A stated goal of the principles.design site is to help us analyze what good principles are. And that sentence can be read in two ways, either to identify good principles or to identify the efficacy of principles. So let me just say it again. A stated goal of the website is to help us analyze what good principles are. So it's unclear to me whether they mean what, to analyze what use of what value principles are, or to analyze those principles that are good. I think it's open to interpretation. In any event, you should check out that website, and it will lead you to others, including the Apple and material design sites. And you should really immerse yourself in the demos. So when I'm just talking to you, giving you this kind of high-level view, it's not complete. You can really see the design. Well, pick up your own phone and you can see the design in action. There's a huge difference between applications that respect the design guidelines, such as Gmail for the material design guidelines, or Safari for the or iCal for that matter for the Apple design guidelines. There's a huge difference between those apps that respect those guidelines and apps that don't respect those guidelines. And if you look at these demos for a while, it'll become really easy for you to tell the difference. So please do investigate that and continue your exploration. And that's the end of what I have to say. Thanks for listening.